They say ghosts don't belong at weddings. But I wasn't a ghost. I was very much alive, standing in the back row of a chapel I didn't belong in, wearing a suit I bought just for this moment, watching the woman I once loved marry someone else. She told everyone I was dead. Not metaphorically. Not in some poetic, heartbroken way. She literally told her friends, her family, her new fiancé, that I died 3 years ago. A car accident, she said. Tragic. Sudden. She even wore black for a week. I found out by accident. A mutual friend, someone who still believed I existed, sent me a screenshot. It was from her bridal shower. Someone had asked about her first love, and she smiled that soft, practiced smile and said, "He passed away. But he taught me so much about life." I stared at that message for an hour. I wasn't angry. Not at first. I was hollow. Because erasing someone is worse than hating them. Hate means you still feel something. But this? This was surgical. Clean. She had rewritten me out of existence, turned me into a tragic footnote in her origin story, a sad chapter that made her look deep. So I decided to do something I'd never done before. I decided to come back from the dead. And I was going to wave. I met her in a bookstore on a rainy October afternoon. Cliché, I know. But life doesn't care about originality. Life doesn't follow a script. It doesn't wait for the perfect moment or the right setting. It just throws people together in the most ordinary places and waits to see what breaks first, your heart or your hope. I wasn't supposed to be there that day. I was supposed to be at home, sitting in front of my laptop, staring at a cursor blinking on a blank white screen, pretending I knew what words to write next. Pretending I was a writer and not just someone who called themselves one to avoid admitting they were directionless and unemployed. But the rain had started around noon. Soft at first, just a gentle patter against my apartment window, but then it grew heavier, angrier, like the sky had been holding something back for too long and finally let go. I didn't have an umbrella. I didn't even have a proper jacket. So I ducked into the first place I saw when the downpour hit, a small independent bookstore tucked between a vintage clothing shop and a cafe that always smelled like burnt espresso. The sign above the door was crooked, hand-painted in faded gold letters, chapter and verse. A bell chimed when I pushed the door open, and the sound felt strangely nostalgic, like stepping into a memory I didn't know I had. Inside, it smelled like old paper and coffee and something faintly sweet, vanilla, maybe, or aged wood. The aisles were narrow, crammed with books stacked on shelves that leaned slightly to the left, like they'd been holding stories for so long they'd started to bend under the weight. There were only a handful of people scattered throughout, an old man reading by the rain-streaked window, a teenager flipping through graphic novels near the front, and her. She was standing in front of the poetry section, near the back of the store where the light was softer, dimmer. Her fingers trailed slowly over the spines of books like she was reading them through touch alone. Like the titles were written in Braille and only she could understand what they said. Her hair was damp from the rain, dark brown and curling slightly at the edges in a way that made her look softer than she probably was. She wore an oversized cream-colored sweater that swallowed her whole, the sleeves pulled down over her hands so only her fingertips showed. Her jeans were cuffed at the ankles, and she wore white sneakers that had seen better days. I didn't plan to talk to her. I wasn't the kind of person who talked to strangers in bookstores. I was the kind of person who avoided eye contact and pretended to be deeply fascinated by the nearest shelf, even if it was just cookbooks I'd never use. But then she pulled out a book, a slim volume with a dark blue cover, and she smiled at it. Not at anyone. Not at me. Just at the book itself. Like it was an old friend she hadn't seen in years and was surprised to find waiting for her. I recognized the cover immediately. Neruda. 20 love poems and a song of despair. And before I could stop myself, before I could think about how awkward it might be, I said, "Good choice." She looked up. Her eyes were brown, the kind of brown that caught light and held it, warm and deep and impossibly steady. She tilted her head slightly, studying me like she was trying to decide if I was worth talking to or if I was just another stranger trying to fill silence. "You read Neruda?" she asked. Her voice was soft but clear, like she didn't waste words. "I try," I said, shoving my hands into my pockets because I didn't know what else to do with them. "Mostly I just pretend to understand him." She laughed. It was quiet, but real. The kind of laugh that doesn't ask for anything in return. "That's the only way to read Neruda," she said, turning the book over in her hands. If you think you understand him completely, you're lying to yourself. Or you're in love, I said. She raised an eyebrow, a small smile playing at the corner of her mouth. Are you? Not yet. The smile widened. Just barely. But I saw it. Well, she said, maybe Neruda will help with that. I laughed. I don't think poetry works that way. You'd be surprised. We talked for 20 minutes. Then an hour. Then 2. The rain didn't stop, and neither did we. We moved from poetry to philosophy to the mundane, favorite coffee orders, worst jobs we'd ever had, the places we wanted to go but probably never would because life didn't work that way. She told me her name was Emma. That she was studying art history at the university downtown. That she spent most of her days in museum basements and library archives, looking at paintings and trying to figure out what the artist was thinking when they made them. What about you? She asked, leaning against the shelf, the Neruda book still in her hands. I'm a writer, I said. Then I corrected myself. Well, I'm trying to be. Freelance stuff mostly. Articles no one reads. Blogs that go nowhere. What do you want to write? She asked. I hesitated. No one ever asked me that. They usually just nodded politely and changed the subject. I don't know yet, I admitted. Something that matters, I guess. Something real. I like that, she said. What? People who don't have all the answers yet. People who are still figuring it out. That's a nice way of saying I'm unemployed and directionless, I said, half joking. She shook her head, her expression serious now. It means you're honest. Most people pretend they know exactly what they're doing. But you're not pretending. I didn't know what to say to that. So I just smiled. By the time the store clerk, a bored-looking college student with headphones around his neck, announced they were closing in 10 minutes, Emma and I were sitting on the floor between the shelves, our backs against the stacks, knees pulled up to our chests. She had the Neruda book open on her lap, and I had a copy of Bukowski I'd picked up at some point during the conversation. Neither of us was reading. Do you believe in fate? She asked suddenly, her voice quiet, thoughtful. I looked at her. Like, destiny? Soulmates and all that? Like, things happening for a reason. People meeting when they're supposed to. I thought about it. About all the small decisions that had led me here, choosing to leave my apartment, forgetting my umbrella, ducking into this specific bookstore at this specific moment. I don't know, I said slowly. I think people just cross paths. What happens after that is up to them. She nodded slowly, like she was turning the idea over in her mind, examining it from all angles. I like that better, she said. It means we get to choose. Yeah, I said. We get to choose. She stood up first, brushing invisible dust off her jeans. I handed her the Neruda book, and she took it, her fingers brushing mine for just a second. I'm Emma, by the way, she said, even though she'd already told me. Adrian. Nice to meet you, Adrian. Nice to meet you too. She walked toward the register, paid for the book, and I watched her the entire time. When she reached the door, she turned back, her hand on the handle. Same time next week, she asked. I blinked, caught off guard. What? It's going to rain again next Friday, she said, a small smile on her lips. I checked the forecast. I smiled back. Yeah. Same time. She left, and the bell chimed behind her. I stood there for a long moment, still holding the Bukowski book I hadn't paid for, wondering if I'd just imagined the whole thing. But I hadn't. And the next Friday, it rained. And she was there, standing in the poetry section, waiting. I didn't know it then, didn't understand what was beginning, but that was the moment I fell. Quiet. Unremarkable. Irreversible. The kind of fall you don't notice until you're already at the bottom, looking up at where you used to be, wondering how you got there and if you'll ever find your way back. But I didn't want to find my way back. Not yet. Not when she was looking at me like I mattered. We became inseparable after that. Not in the loud, obvious way that people notice and comment on. Not in the way where couples post about each other constantly online, where every moment is documented and shared and validated by strangers. We weren't like that. We were quiet about it. Invisible, almost. But we were everywhere together. Late-night phone calls that started at midnight and ended when the sun came up, when we'd both realize we'd been talking for 6 hours straight and neither of us had noticed. Coffee dates that turned into wandering the city for hours, getting lost on purpose just to see where we'd end up. She'd text me photos throughout the day, close-ups of paintings she loved, museum plaques with descriptions she found beautiful, street art she discovered in alleys I'd never think to explore. And I'd send her poems. Lines I'd underlined in books. Verses I'd written at 3 a.m. when I couldn't sleep because I was thinking about her. About the way she laughed. About the way she listened like every word I said actually mattered. She made me feel like I was worth listening to. I'd never had that before. Not really. People always talked over me. Interrupted before I could finish my sentences. Their eyes would glaze over halfway through, already thinking about what they wanted to say next, just waiting for me to stop talking so they could start. I learned early on to just stop trying. To let other people fill the silence. To nod and smile and pretend I didn't have anything important to say anyway. But Emma was different. She listened. She leaned in. She asked follow-up questions that proved she'd actually heard me. She remembered things I'd mentioned weeks ago, random details I thought she'd forgotten, and brought them up like they mattered. Like I mattered. One night, we were sitting on her apartment balcony. It was barely big enough for 2 folding chairs and a dying succulent she kept forgetting to water. The city stretched out below us, a mess of lights and distant sirens and the low hum of traffic that never really stopped. She had a blanket wrapped around her shoulders even though it wasn't that cold. I had my notebook open on my lap, a pen in my hand, but I hadn't written anything in 20 minutes. I was just sitting there, watching her watch the city. "Can I ask you something?" she said, breaking the comfortable silence. "Always. Why did you stop writing?" I looked at her, surprised. "I didn't stop. You stopped sharing it," she corrected gently. "You told me you used to post your work online. You had followers. People who read your stuff and commented and shared it. And then you just stopped." I closed the notebook slowly. Because it didn't feel real anymore. "What do you mean?" "I was writing what people wanted to hear," I said. "Not what I needed to say." And after a while, I couldn't tell the difference. Every piece became about getting likes, getting shares, getting validation from strangers who didn't actually know me. I started second-guessing every word. Changing things to make them more palatable. More marketable. And eventually, I looked at my work and didn't recognize it anymore. She was quiet for a moment, processing. Then she said, "So write what scares you." "What?" "Write what you're afraid to say," she said, turning to look at me. "That's the only stuff worth reading anyway. The safe stuff? Anyone can write that. But the scary stuff, the stuff that makes you feel exposed and vulnerable, that's where the truth is." I stared at the blank page in my notebook. What if it's not good enough? She reached over and put her hand on mine. Her fingers were cold from the night air, but steady. "Certain. Then it's still yours." That simple statement changed everything. I started writing again that night. Really writing. Not the polished, carefully constructed pieces I used to post online. But raw, messy, honest work that made my chest feel tight and my hands shake. Work that felt too personal to share. Work that scared me because it was true. She was the first person I showed it to. We were at my apartment a few weeks later, a cramped studio that smelled faintly of coffee and the lavender detergent I used because it was on sale. She was sitting cross-legged on my beat-up couch, holding my notebook in both hands like it was made of glass. She read in complete silence, her eyes moving across the lines, occasionally pausing to reread something. I sat on the floor across from her, pretending to scroll through my phone but really just watching her face, trying to gauge her reaction, terrified she'd think it was terrible. When she finally looked up, her eyes were glassy with unshed tears. "Adrian," she said softly, her voice thick. "This is beautiful. It's not finished. It's perfect. It's messy. It's honest." She closed the notebook carefully and held it against her chest. "You have to share this. The world needs to read this." "I can't." "Why not?" "Because it felt too vulnerable," I wanted to say. Because it felt like handing someone a map to all the parts of me I usually kept hidden, locked away where no one could judge them. Because if people didn't like it, it would mean they didn't like me. "Because it's yours," she said quietly, like she'd read my mind. "I get it. But Adrian, keeping this to yourself is it's like painting a masterpiece and hiding it in your closet. What's the point?" I didn't have an answer for that. "You don't have to share it today," she continued. "Or tomorrow. But someday. When you're ready. Promise me you'll let people see this." I looked at her, at the way she held my work like it mattered, at the genuine emotion in her eyes, and I believed her. I always believed her. We spent every weekend together after that. We'd meet at museums and spend hours wandering through exhibits. She'd stop in front of paintings I would have walked right past, and she'd explain what she saw, the brushstrokes, the color choices, the historical context. She made me see art differently. We'd go to parks and sit under trees, her sketching in her journal while I wrote beside her. We didn't always talk. Sometimes we just existed in each other's presence, comfortable in the silence, content to create side by side. We'd find tiny cafes tucked into side streets, places with 3 tables and terrible coffee and pastries that were always either too dry or too sweet, and we'd stay for hours, talking about everything and nothing. I loved the way she looked at art. She didn't just glance at paintings, she studied them. She'd tilt her head to one side, step closer, step back, narrow her eyes like she was having a silent conversation with the canvas. Once, we were at a gallery downtown, and she stood in front of an abstract piece for 15 minutes without saying a single word. It was chaotic, violent splashes of red and black against a stark white background. I didn't get it at all. "What do you see?" I finally asked, unable to stay quiet any longer. She didn't look away from the painting. "Grief," she said simply. "But also, release. Like someone finally let go of something they'd been holding on to for too long. Like they set it down and walked away." I looked at the painting again, trying to see what she saw. I still didn't get it. But I loved that she did. That was us. I saw the world in words, she saw it in colors and shapes. I wrote, she painted. We fit together in a way that felt effortless, natural, like we'd been doing this for years instead of months. I thought we were building something real. Something that would last. I thought she felt the same way. But looking back now, I realize I was the only one building. She was already planning her exit. She just hadn't told me yet. It started so small I almost didn't notice. Or maybe I did notice, but I convinced myself I was imagining it. That I was being paranoid. That I was overthinking like I always did. A cancelled plan here. A delayed text there. At first, it was reasonable. Understandable. She was busy with her thesis, a massive research project she'd been working on for months. She had deadlines. Professors breathing down her neck. Pages to write and paintings to analyze and presentations to prepare. "I'm so sorry," she'd text. "Rain check? Thesis is killing me." And I'd respond, "Of course. No worries. You've got this." Because I understood. I was a writer. I knew what it was like when work consumed you, when deadlines loomed and you couldn't think about anything else. So I gave her space. I told myself it was temporary. That once the thesis was done, things would go back to normal. But they didn't. The space grew wider. She stopped asking about my work. Stopped reading my drafts. I'd send her something I was excited about, a new essay, a breakthrough paragraph, something I thought she'd appreciate, and she'd respond hours later with just 2 words, "That's great." No follow-up questions. No thoughtful commentary like she used to give. Just 2 words and a period. I told myself she was tired. Overwhelmed. Stressed. I told myself it had nothing to do with me. But deep down, I knew better. Her friends started appearing more frequently. People I'd never met. People whose names she'd never mentioned before suddenly filled every gap in her schedule. We'd make plans, just the 2 of us, and I'd show up to find 3 or 4 other people already there. She'd introduce me casually, like an afterthought, "Oh, this is Adrian." Not my boyfriend. Not someone important to me. Just Adrian. And her friends would smile politely and immediately go back to their conversation, and I'd stand there feeling like I'd crashed a party I wasn't invited to. We'd go out, and she'd spend the entire time talking to them. Laughing at inside jokes I wasn't part of. Referencing stories and memories I'd never heard. And I'd sit there at the end of the table, smiling, nodding, pretending it didn't hurt. Pretending I wasn't slowly becoming invisible. One Friday night in late March, she invited me to a party. I didn't want to go. I hated parties. Hated the noise, the small talk, the performative friendliness. Hated feeling like I had to prove I was interesting enough to be there. But she asked. And I couldn't say no to her. The party was at someone's apartment in the arts district. I didn't know whose. Emma didn't tell me, and I didn't ask. The place was packed, at least 50 people crammed into a 2-bedroom apartment. Music blasted from a speaker in the corner. People clustered in groups, shouting over the noise, holding red cups and laughing too loud. I lost Emma within 10 minutes. She disappeared into the crowd, swept up immediately by friends who pulled her toward the kitchen, the balcony, anywhere but where I was. I stood near the wall, holding a beer I didn't want, checking my phone like I had somewhere else to be. Like I had other options. That's when I heard her voice. She was in the hallway, just around the corner from where I was standing. I couldn't see her, but I could hear her clearly. The music wasn't as loud there. "Are you guys serious?" someone asked, a woman's voice I recognized vaguely. One of Emma's friends from class. There was a pause. Just a second. But I heard it. Felt it. "I don't know," Emma said finally. Her voice was different. Tired. Honest in a way she wasn't with me anymore. "He's sweet. But I don't think he's the one." My chest tightened. My hand gripped the beer can harder. "What do you mean?" the friend pressed. Emma sighed, a long, exhausted sound. "He's just stuck, you know? He talks about writing all the time, but he never actually does anything with it. He's afraid of everything. Afraid to take risks. Afraid to put himself out there. And I can't be with someone who's too afraid to live." The words hit me like a punch to the stomach. Afraid to live. Is that what she thought of me? I don't remember leaving. Don't remember walking out the front door or getting into my car or driving home. I just remember sitting in my driveway afterward, hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white, staring at nothing. Afraid to live. I sat there for an hour. Maybe 2. My phone buzzed occasionally, texts from Emma, probably, wondering where I'd gone. But I didn't look. Didn't care. When I finally went inside, I lay in bed fully clothed and stared at the ceiling until the sun came up. She texted me the next morning, "Hey, sorry I didn't get to talk to you much last night. It was so crowded. Want to hang out this week, **. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed back, "Yeah? Sure, **. But I knew the truth now. She didn't want to hang out with me. She wanted to keep me around just long enough to feel like she'd tried. Like she'd given it an honest shot before she left. She was already halfway out the door. And the worst part? I stayed anyway. Because I thought love was supposed to be hard. I thought if I just tried harder, if I became braver, less afraid, more like the person she wanted, she'd see me again. Really see me. I thought I could change enough to make her stay. But love isn't supposed to make you smaller. It's not supposed to make you hate yourself for not being enough. And I was disappearing, piece by piece, trying to become someone she could love. Someone I didn't even recognize anymore. It happened at her thesis exhibition. The event she'd been working toward for an entire year. The culmination of everything, her research, her analysis, her artistic vision. She'd been consumed by it for months. Late nights in the studio. Paint permanently embedded under her fingernails. Exhaustion written across her face every time I saw her. But she'd asked me to come. "I want you there," she'd said when she handed me the invitation, a small cream-colored card with elegant black lettering. "It's important to me that you're there." So I went. I wore my best shirt, a navy blue button-down she'd once said made my eyes look darker, more intense. I got a haircut the day before. I even bought flowers, white lilies, her favorite, from the expensive florist downtown instead of the grocery store. The gallery was in a converted warehouse in the Arts District. High ceilings with exposed beams. Brick walls painted white. Industrial lighting hanging from thick chains. It was the kind of space that made everything look important, elevated. When I arrived, the place was already packed. Easily 100 people, her professors, her classmates, people from the local art scene wearing all black and carrying wine glasses, speaking in low, serious tones about composition and emotional resonance and artistic intent. I felt out of place immediately. I always did in spaces like this. But I stayed. For her. Her paintings lined the walls in a carefully curated arrangement. The series was called * Metamorphosis. * Each piece explored transformation, butterflies emerging from cocoons, trees shedding autumn leaves, buildings crumbling into beautiful ruins, phoenixes rising from ash. The colors were vivid. Emotional. Raw in a way I'd never seen in her work before. People moved slowly from piece to piece, tilting their heads, nodding thoughtfully, whispering observations to one another. I heard fragments of conversations as I walked past. The use of color here is extraordinary. You can feel the transition, the liminal space. She's really matured as an artist. I felt proud of her. Despite everything, despite the distance that had grown between us, I was proud. And then I reached the centerpiece. It was positioned in the very center of the gallery, under a dramatic spotlight that made it impossible to miss. The canvas was massive, at least 6 feet tall, maybe more. And the moment I saw it, my breath caught in my throat. It was me. Or rather, it was us. A lone figure stood in the center of a desolate landscape, barren, gray, lifeless. The ground was cracked and dry. The sky was a bruised purple, heavy with storm clouds that would never break. The figure's hand was outstretched, reaching desperately toward someone in the distance. But that someone was already walking away. Their back was turned. Their form was fading into mist, becoming translucent, disappearing. They weren't looking back. The colors were muted. Cold. The entire painting felt hollow, empty, like a memory that had been drained of all warmth. And at the bottom, on a small white placard mounted on the wall, was the title. Outgrown. I stood there, frozen, unable to move, unable to breathe, as people gathered around me to study the painting. It's so haunting, a woman beside me said, her voice hushed with reverence. You can feel the loneliness radiating off it. The isolation is visceral, someone else agreed. It's like watching someone become a ghost in real time. The composition is brilliant, a man in a grey blazer added. The way the figure is reaching but the other person is already gone, it's devastating. They talked about it like it was just art. Just a painting. Just a clever arrangement of colors and shapes meant to evoke emotion. But it wasn't just art. It was me. My loneliness. My desperation. My love, stripped down, dissected, put on display for strangers to analyze and critique and discuss over wine. I looked across the gallery. Emma was there, surrounded by a group of people, professors, probably, or collectors. She was glowing. Smiling. Holding a glass of champagne. She looked radiant, triumphant, like someone who'd just accomplished something extraordinary. I caught her eye. She saw me standing in front of the painting. And she looked away. Not quickly. Not guiltily. Just, away. Casual. Unbothered. Like I was part of the scenery. Part of the background noise. I stayed for another hour. I don't know why. Maybe I was hoping she'd come over. Maybe I thought she'd pull me aside and explain. Maybe I thought there was some context I was missing, some deeper meaning that would make this okay. But she didn't. She worked the room like a professional, moving from group to group, accepting compliments, discussing her artistic process, laughing at things that weren't funny. Finally, as the crowd began to thin, I approached her. She was talking to a man in an expensive suit who looked important, some kind of gallery owner or patron, probably. Emma, I said quietly. She turned, her smile faltering for just a fraction of a second before snapping back into place. Oh, hey. I'm so glad you came. Can we talk? I asked. Just for a minute? She glanced at the man beside her, then back to me. I'm kind of in the middle of. 1 minute, I said firmly. She excused herself, and we stepped into a quieter corner of the gallery, away from the crowd. What did you think? She asked brightly, like nothing was wrong. Did you like the series? I stared at her. The centerpiece. Outgrown. That's me. She blinked. It's inspired by a lot of things. Emma. I kept my voice steady, even though I felt like I was breaking. Don't. That's me. You know it is. She sighed, crossing her arms defensively. It's art, Adrian. It's not about you specifically. It's about growth. About moving on. About the necessary pain of transformation. Everyone experiences it. You put my pain on a wall, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. You took what I felt, what we were, and turned it into a fucking exhibit. You're being dramatic. Am I? She looked at me then, really looked at me, and for a moment, I thought I saw something. Guilt. Regret. Something human. But it disappeared as quickly as it came. I'm sorry you're upset, she said carefully, like she was choosing her words for an audience. But this is my work. My process. I can't apologize for creating something honest. Honest? I repeated. The word tasted bitter. You didn't even tell me you were doing this. I didn't think I had to. And there it was. The truth. She didn't think she had to tell me because I didn't matter enough. Because I wasn't a person to her anymore. I was material. Raw material she could mine for her art, for her career, for her narrative of growth and transformation. I wasn't her partner. I was her muse. Her cautionary tale. Her before picture. I have to go, I said. Adrian. But I was already walking away. Out of the gallery. Into the cold night air. I kept walking until I reached my car, and then I sat there in the darkness, hands trembling, chest heaving. I didn't text her. And she didn't text me. Not that night. Not the next day. Not ever. Because we both knew. It was over. We didn't officially break up. There was no final conversation. No moment where one of us said the words asterisk, I think we should end this. Asterisk, no closure. No explanation. We just stopped. Stopped texting. Stopped calling. Stopped existing in each other's lives. I waited for her to reach out. To ask how I was. To acknowledge what had happened at the gallery. To apologize or explain or say anything at all. But she never did. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. The silence stretched on, heavy and suffocating, until it became normal. Until I stopped expecting to hear from her. I told myself I was moving on. I deleted her number from my phone, not blocked, just deleted, because blocking felt too final, too dramatic. I unfollowed her on social media. Unfollowed her friends too, anyone who might post about her. I stopped going to the coffee shop we used to frequent. Stopped walking past her apartment building. Stopped listening to the songs she loved. I threw myself into work. Took on more freelance projects. Spent entire days in libraries and coffee shops, headphones in, drowning in words and deadlines and anything that would keep me from thinking about her. It hurt. God, it hurt. But I was managing. I was healing, slowly, incrementally, like a bone that had broken and was learning how to bear weight again. And then I got the message. It was from Marcus, a mutual friend, someone who knew both of us but had always been closer to her circle. We hadn't talked in months. So when his name appeared on my phone screen late one Thursday night, my stomach immediately dropped. Hey man, he wrote. I don't know if I should tell you this, but I thought you deserved to know. I stared at the message. What? I typed back, my hands already shaking. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Then a screenshot came through. It was from a group chat, names I didn't recognize, people from Emma's program probably. Someone had asked about me. Asterisk, hey Emma, whatever happened to that guy you were dating? The writer? I remember you talking about him last year. Asterisk. I scrolled down to see Emma's response, timestamp 2 days earlier. Asterisk, he passed away. Car accident. It was really sudden. It's been hard, but I'm doing better now. Asterisk. I read it once. Twice. Then 10 times. Then I stopped counting. My vision blurred. My hands were trembling so violently I almost dropped my phone. He passed away. Car accident. I'm doing better now. She told people I was dead. Not metaphorically. Not in some poetic, heartbroken, he's dead to me, kind of way. She literally told her friends that I died. That I was gone. Erased. Removed from existence. I called Marcus immediately, not caring that it was almost midnight. He picked up on the second ring. Hey. Is she serious? I interrupted, my voice raw. Is she fucking serious? There was a pause. Yeah, man. I think so. She's told a lot of people. I didn't know until someone mentioned it at a party last weekend. I thought you should know. I'm really sorry. I hung up without responding. I sat on the edge of my bed, phone clutched in my hand, staring at the screenshot until the screen went dark. She didn't just leave me. She erased me. Killed me off. Turned me into a convenient tragedy that made her look sympathetic. Made her the survivor. The grieving ex-girlfriend who lost someone and came out stronger on the other side. Meanwhile, I was out here, alive, breathing, struggling to move on, while she told the world I didn't exist anymore. I opened her social media, even though I'd promised myself I wouldn't. Her accounts were private now, but her profile picture was still visible. It was a recent photo, her at a beach somewhere, smiling wide, arms wrapped around someone I didn't recognize. A guy. Tall, athletic, wearing sunglasses. Her last public post, from 3 weeks ago, said, learning to live again. Sunrise, I laughed. A bitter, hollow sound that echoed in my empty apartment. Learning to live again. As if I'd actually died. As if I wasn't still here, still trying to piece myself back together after she'd shattered me. I thought about confronting her. Texting her. Calling her. Showing up at her apartment and demanding to know how she could do this. How she could erase someone she claimed to have cared about. But what would be the point? She'd made her choice. Saying I died was easier than admitting she'd hurt me. Easier than explaining why we ended. Easier than taking responsibility for what she'd done. It was a clean story. A tragic story. One that made her look deep and damaged and brave. And I was just collateral damage. I closed my phone and sat in the darkness for a long time. And then, slowly, something shifted inside me. Anger, maybe. Or clarity. Or just exhaustion with being erased. I wasn't going to stay dead. I didn't know what I was going to do yet. Didn't have a plan. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. She didn't get to bury me. Not while I was still breathing. Not while I was still here. I found out about her wedding 3 weeks after Marcus sent me that screenshot. It wasn't intentional. I wasn't stalking her social media or obsessively checking up on her. I'd actually been doing better, going to therapy, writing consistently again, rebuilding the parts of myself I'd lost while trying to be enough for her. But then fate, or coincidence, or just cruel timing, intervened. I was scrolling through Instagram late one night, mindlessly killing time before bed, when I saw a post from Rachel. I barely knew her. She'd been in Emma's art history program, someone I'd met maybe twice at parties. But we were still following each other, probably because neither of us had bothered to clean out our follower lists. The post was a photo of an invitation. Elegant calligraphy on thick cream cardstock. Watercolor flowers in the corners. A date, June 15th. A venue, Chapel in the Pines, someplace in the hills outside the city. And at the top, in beautiful, swooping letters, Emma and Daniel. The caption read, can't wait to celebrate these two beautiful souls. So honored to be part of their special day. 2 hearts #forever starts now #chapel wedding *. I stared at my phone screen, the light harsh in my dark bedroom. Emma was getting married. To someone named Daniel. Someone I'd never heard of. Someone who, presumably, had no idea I existed. Or rather, someone who thought I was dead. I clicked on Emma's profile even though I knew it was private. Her profile picture had changed. It was a photo of her and him, Daniel. He was tall, clean-cut, conventionally handsome in that generic, catalog model kind of way. They were standing on a beach at sunset, her hand resting on his chest, a diamond ring catching the golden light. They looked happy. Perfect. Like a couple from a wedding magazine. I felt nothing. No jealousy. No heartbreak. Just a strange, detached curiosity. Over the next few days, I found myself clicking through Rachel's page, finding more breadcrumbs. Photos from the engagement party, Emma in a white dress, laughing, surrounded by friends. Posts about the bridal shower, mimosas and games and gift bags with personalized tags. Updates about dress fittings and floral arrangements and choosing between vanilla and red velvet cake. Emma looked radiant in every single photo. Glowing. Like someone who'd successfully moved on from her past and never looked back. Like someone who'd buried her mistakes and built something new on top. And then I found the venue details. Chapel in the Pines. A small, private venue about an hour outside the city. Intimate. Elegant. Expensive. The wedding was in 2 months. I wasn't invited. Obviously. Dead men don't get wedding invitations. But I was going anyway. The decision came slowly, then all at once. Not out of anger or revenge or some desperate attempt to win her back. I didn't want her back. I didn't even hate her anymore. I just wanted to exist. To be seen. To prove, once and for all, that she couldn't just erase people when they became inconvenient. I bought a suit for weeks before the wedding. Navy blue, tailored, more expensive than anything I'd ever owned. I went to a proper tailor, got it fitted perfectly. I got a haircut at an actual salon instead of the cheap place I usually went. I started going to the gym, not obsessively, just enough to feel stronger, more present in my own body. I wasn't doing it for her. I was doing it for me. Because over the past year, I'd been rebuilding. Slowly. Painfully. But consistently. Therapy had helped. My therapist, Dr. Patel, had helped me see patterns I'd been blind to. The way I'd made myself smaller in the relationship. The way I'd let Emma's perception of me become my perception of myself. You gave her all the power, Dr. Patel had said during one session. You let her decide your worth. And when she decided you weren't enough, you believed her. She was right. But I didn't believe that anymore. I'd been writing again. Really writing. Not for anyone else, for me. I'd finished the manuscript I'd started years ago, the one Emma had read and called beautiful. I'd sent it to agents. Gotten rejections. Kept going. And finally, miraculously, I'd gotten an offer. A small press. Not a huge deal. Not a bestseller. But it was mine. My words. My truth. It was coming out in 3 months. I was rebuilding my life. Piece by piece. Word by word. And I wasn't going to let Emma's lie stand. The night before the wedding, I laid my suit out on my bed. Pressed shirt. Polished shoes. Simple tie. I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the collar, and looked at myself. I looked good. Healthy. Whole. You don't have to do this, I said to my reflection. But I did. Because some stories don't end with silence. Some stories don't end with erasure. Some stories end with a single, undeniable truth. I was alive. And tomorrow, everyone was going to know it. I didn't want drama. Didn't want to make a speech or cause a scene. I just wanted to stand there, in that chapel, and exist. To wave. To say, without words, asterisk I'm still here. You didn't bury me. You don't get to rewrite history. Asterisk. I slept poorly that night. Woke up at dawn. Made coffee. Sat on my balcony and watched the sun rise over the city, painting everything gold. At noon, I got dressed. At 1, I got in my car and started driving. By 1:30, I was pulling into the parking lot of Chapel in the Pines. My heart was pounding. My hands were steady. I walked toward the entrance, past couples in summer dresses and linen suits, past ushers handing out programs. No one stopped me. No one questioned why I was there. I slipped inside during the prelude, when people were still finding their seats and adjusting their ties and whispering to each other. And I sat down in the very last row. Invisible. Waiting. The chapel was beautiful. Of course it was. Emma wouldn't have settled for anything less. Everything about it was perfect, polished, meticulously planned. White roses and peonies lined the aisle in elegant arrangements, their petals so perfect they almost looked fake. Candles flickered on every available surface, the windowsills, the altar, small tables near the entrance, casting warm, golden light that made everything look like a painting. A string quartet sat in the corner, playing something slow and classical. Pachelbel's Canon, maybe. Or one of those other wedding songs that all sound vaguely the same. The kind of music that's designed to make people cry before anything even happens. I slipped inside during the prelude, when guests were still trickling in, finding their seats, adjusting their dresses and smoothing their hair. No one paid attention to me. Why would they? I was just another guest in a suit, another face in the crowd. I took a seat in the very back row, closest to the center aisle, right next to the door. Just in case I needed to leave quickly. Just in case this was a terrible idea and I needed an escape route. The chapel was small, maybe 75 seats total. Intimate. The kind of venue that made everything feel personal, significant. Emma's family sat in the front, her mother already dabbing her eyes with an embroidered handkerchief, her father sitting rigidly in his suit, looking uncomfortable the way fathers always do at weddings. Her friends filled the rows behind them, people I recognized from photos, from parties I'd been dragged to, from that night at the gallery. They wore pastel dresses and floral prints and looked like they'd stepped out of a magazine spread about summer wedding guest attire. I recognized Rachel 3 rows from the front, wearing a lavender dress. She was laughing at something the person next to her said, completely oblivious to my presence. No one recognized me. No one even looked my way. I was invisible. A ghost, just like Emma had made me. But not for much longer. The music shifted. The quartet began playing the processional, something soaring and romantic. Everyone stood. And then she appeared at the back of the chapel. Emma. She stood in the doorway for a moment, framed by the afternoon light streaming in from outside, and even I had to admit, she looked stunning. Her dress was simple but elegant. White lace with long sleeves and a train that flowed behind her like water. Her hair was pulled back in a soft, romantic style with a few loose curls framing her face. She carried a bouquet of white roses, and her makeup was flawless, natural but enhanced, glowing but not overdone. She looked like a bride from a fairy tale. Like someone who'd found her happy ending. Her father stood beside her, his arm linked with hers, and they began the slow walk down the aisle. I watched from my seat in the back. Watched as people turned to look at her, smiling, some already crying. Watched as she smiled back at them, radiant and confident. Watched as her eyes found Daniel at the altar, tall, handsome, beaming at her like she was the only person in the world. She didn't see me. She wasn't looking at the back row. Why would she? I was supposed to be dead. She reached the altar. Her father kissed her cheek, shook Daniel's hand, and took his seat. Emma handed her bouquet to one of her bridesmaids and turned to face Daniel. The officiant began. A middle-aged man with a kind face and a warm voice. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to witness the union of Emma and Daniel." I didn't listen to the words. I just watched. Watched Emma smile. Watched her laugh softly at something Daniel whispered. Watched her eyes shine with tears, happy tears, the kind brides are supposed to cry. The officiant talked about love and commitment and building a life together. About being each other's partner through all of life's challenges. I wondered if Daniel knew about me. If Emma had told him the truth, that I existed, that we'd dated, that she'd ended things badly. Or if she'd told him the lie. If he thought he was her first real love. If he thought she'd never been hurt before. "Emma," the officiant said, "do you take Daniel to be your lawfully wedded husband?" "I do." Her voice was clear, steady, certain. "And Daniel, do you take Emma to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do." His voice cracked slightly, emotional. "Then by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride." They kissed. Not too long, not too short. Tasteful. Appropriate. The kind of kiss you give in front of your grandmother and your boss. Everyone applauded. The quartet launched into something triumphant. Emma and Daniel turned to face the crowd, beaming, and began walking back down the aisle, hand in hand. And I felt nothing. Not anger. Not sadness. Not even bitterness. Just a strange, quiet sense of closure. This was her life now. Her choice. Her future. And I wasn't part of it. I stayed seated as everyone filed out after them, following the couple toward the reception hall next door. I stayed in the empty chapel for a long moment, listening to the fading footsteps and distant laughter. Then I stood, adjusted my tie, and walked out. The reception was in a hall adjacent to the chapel, same elegant aesthetic, more string lights, round tables covered in white linens, a dance floor in the center. A banner stretched across one wall, "Emma and Daniel, forever starts now." Music played softly from speakers. People mingled, holding champagne glasses, laughing, congratulating the couple. Emma and Daniel stood near the entrance, greeting guests as they arrived. Hugging friends. Posing for photos. Smiling until their faces must have hurt. I stood near the back, next to the bar, and watched. That's when people started noticing. A double take from someone I didn't recognize. Their eyes widened. They leaned over to whisper something to the person next to them. Then both of them looked at me. The whispers spread like a wave. I saw Rachel across the room. Her eyes landed on me, and her face went pale. She grabbed the arm of the person next to her, pointed discreetly in my direction. More whispers. More stares. And then Emma's friend, the one from the party, the one she'd told, "He's not the one," saw me. Her mouth fell open. She looked like she'd seen an actual ghost. She turned immediately and whispered frantically to someone else. The whispers rippled through the room. And then Emma saw me. She was mid-sentence, laughing at something Daniel said, holding a champagne glass, her hand raised in a toast. Her eyes drifted casually across the room, scanning faces, acknowledging guests, and then they landed on me. Her smile froze. Her hand, mid-toast, stopped in the air. Her face drained of color. For a single, suspended moment, the entire room seemed to blur. It was just her and me. Across the distance. Across all the lies. She didn't move. Didn't speak. Just stared, her mouth slightly open, her eyes wide with something that looked like fear. Daniel noticed. He followed her gaze, confused. Babe? You okay? She didn't answer. Couldn't answer. I didn't walk toward her. Didn't say a word. Didn't need to. I just stood there, in the middle of the reception hall, surrounded by people who thought I was dead. And I waved. A small, polite wave. The kind you give an old acquaintance. The kind that says, *hello. I'm here. I exist. Her champagne glass slipped from her hand. It shattered on the floor, the sound cutting through the music and conversation like a gunshot. Everyone turned. Silence rippled outward. I held her gaze for one more second. Then I turned and walked out. She didn't follow me. She couldn't. Too many people watching. Too many eyes on her, waiting for an explanation she couldn't give. Too many questions forming in whispered conversations around the room. Her new husband, Daniel, looked utterly confused. Concerned. I saw him through the window as I walked toward my car. He had his hand on her shoulder, leaning in close, asking if she was okay. She was nodding, forcing a smile, but her hands were shaking. Even from the parking lot, I could see that. Her friends looked horrified. Rachel stood frozen near the bar, her mouth open, her phone already out, probably texting someone, trying to figure out what the hell just happened. The friend from the party, the one she'd confided in about me, stared at the door I'd just walked through like I might reappear any second. But I wasn't going back. I'd done what I came to do. I got in my car, started the engine, and sat there for a moment, hands on the steering wheel, letting the adrenaline drain from my body. I didn't feel triumphant. Didn't feel vindicated. Didn't feel like I'd won anything. I just felt free. For the first time in over a year, I felt like I could breathe without something pressing on my chest. I drove home through the golden late afternoon light, windows down, radio off, just the sound of wind and distant traffic and my own steady breathing. When I got home, I made coffee. Sat on my balcony. Watched the sun set over the city, painting everything in shades of orange and pink and purple. My phone was on silent. I knew it would be blowing up soon, if it wasn't already. I was right. By the next morning, I had 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. Most were from people I barely knew. Mutual acquaintances. Friends of friends. People who'd heard what happened and wanted details, wanted gossip, wanted to be part of the story. I ignored all of them. Except one. A text from Emma. Sent at 3:47 a.m., probably after hours of lying awake, staring at her ceiling, trying to figure out what to say. The preview showed the first line, "Adrian, I don't even know where to start." I opened it. The message was long. Multiple paragraphs. The kind of rambling, desperate message you send when you're panicking and trying to control damage and apologize all at once. Adrian, I don't even know where to start. I'm so sorry. I know that doesn't mean anything right now, but I need you to understand, I never meant for things to go this far. I was scared. After we stopped talking, people kept asking about you, and I didn't know what to say. I didn't want to explain what happened between us. I didn't want to admit that I hurt you. So I said you were gone. I thought it would be easier. I thought it would stop the questions. I didn't think you'd ever find out. I didn't think you'd ever know, I know how messed up that is. I know I can't take it back. I know I hurt you in ways I can't even fully comprehend. But please believe me when I say I didn't do it to hurt you intentionally. I did it because I was a coward. Because I couldn't face what I'd done. Because it was easier to tell a lie than to take responsibility, I saw you yesterday, and I couldn't breathe. I thought I was hallucinating. I thought my mind was playing tricks on me. And then I realized it was really you, and I didn't know what to do. I wanted to talk to you, but I couldn't. Not there. Not in front of everyone. Not in front of Daniel He doesn't know. About you, I mean. He knows I dated someone before him, but I told him it ended amicably. I didn't tell him about the painting or the lies or any of it. And now I have to figure out how to explain what happened yesterday without destroying everything, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even know if you'll read this whole message. But I need you to know, I'm sorry. For everything. For the painting. For the lies. For making you feel like you didn't matter, you did matter. You do matter, I hope you're okay. I hope you're happy. I hope you find someone who sees you the way you deserve to be seen, I'm so sorry, Adrian. I read it once, slowly, letting every word sink in. Then I read it again. Then I deleted it. Not out of anger. Not out of spite. Not even out of bitterness. But because I didn't need it. Her apology didn't change anything. Didn't undo the erasure. Didn't heal the wound. It was just words, too late, too convenient, too self-serving. She was sorry because she got caught. Because her lie exploded in front of everyone she cared about. Because she had to face consequences for the first time. But I didn't need her apology to move on. I'd already moved on the moment I decided to walk into that chapel. Over the next few weeks, I heard things through the grapevine. Fragments of information that drifted back to me through mutual connections. Emma and Daniel were taking some time apart. The wedding had caused a rift, not because of me specifically, but because the lie had revealed something deeper. A pattern of deception. A willingness to rewrite history when it suited her. Her friends were divided. Some defended her, said she'd made a mistake, that everyone deserved forgiveness. Others distanced themselves, questioning what else she might have lied about. Her family was confused. Her mother kept calling her, asking for explanations Emma couldn't give. The perfect life she'd built was unraveling, thread by thread. I didn't feel good about it. But I didn't feel bad either. I just felt neutral. Detached. Like I was watching someone else's story from a distance. I focused on myself. My book came out 2 months later. Outgrown, I'd kept the title, reclaimed it, made it mine. It was a small release from an independent press, but it was real. My words. My truth. My story about loving someone who made me feel invisible and finding myself again on the other side. It didn't become a bestseller. Didn't get reviewed in major publications. But it found its readers. People who'd been through similar things. People who'd been erased and had to fight their way back into existence. I got emails. Messages. Comments from strangers who said, "This helped me. This made me feel less alone. Thank you for writing this." And that meant more than any revenge ever could. I started dating again. Slowly. Carefully. I met someone, Sarah, a teacher who loved hiking and terrible puns and didn't expect me to be anything other than who I was. We took things slow. Built something real, something healthy, something based on mutual respect instead of desperation. And one day, about 6 months after the wedding, I was sitting in a coffee shop, working on my second book, when someone approached my table. "Excuse me," a young woman said tentatively. She looked to be in her early 20s, holding a worn copy of my book. "Are you Adrian?" I looked up, surprised. "Yeah." Her face lit up. "I just finished your book. It was beautiful. I went through something similar last year, and reading this made me feel like I wasn't crazy. Like what I felt mattered. I just wanted to say thank you." I felt something warm spread through my chest. "Thank you. That really means a lot." She smiled, nodded, and walked away. I sat there, staring at my laptop, feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Pride. Not because I'd gotten revenge. Not because I'd proven Emma wrong. But because I'd survived. Because I'd taken the pain she tried to bury me with and turned it into something real. Something that helped other people. Something that mattered. And sometimes, when people ask about my past, about my inspirations, about where the book came from, I tell them the truth. I once loved someone who tried to erase me. Who told the world I was dead because it was easier than admitting she'd hurt me. Who painted me as a ghost and moved on like I'd never existed. But I refused to stay buried. I came back. I wrote. I lived. I breathed. And that refusal to be erased, that insistence on existing despite someone's attempt to rewrite history, that's the only revenge I ever needed. Because at the end of the day, the best revenge isn't dramatic. It isn't a scene at a wedding or a confrontation or a public call-out. The best revenge is living well. It's healing. It's creating. It's building a life that doesn't revolve around the person who hurt you. It's waving politely at your past and walking away. It's being alive, truly alive, when someone tried to bury you. And I'm still here. Still writing. Still living. Still breathing. And that's everything.